Good evening, all. Hopefully, you can hear me well. It is Drake Day for Star Citizen. Oh my good lord, I'm nowhere near the middle of the screen. There we go. That's better. It is Drake Day, um, and we'll talk about it. It likely. I know I say this every single time, and it ends up not being. But it will very likely be tonight at a slightly shorter stream. It's been a hell of a day for me. Went and played a game of Adeptus Titanicus at Entoyment down in Poole, which is really cool. Went to the Bovington Tank Museum, came back, got about an hour's just like nap. Haven't eaten, a little bit hangry, all that sort of stuff. So welcome in. Good to see you all. And we'll be going over to have a look at the Drake stuff very, very shortly. Yeah. Or should I say, possibly, in Drake's case, the lack of Drake. Which I guess, I would say I'm giving it away. I'm not. I'm waking up to the news. But you guys, you will have seen it already. And I know for those of you that are in the chat and everything else, in the Discord chat, that you already know what there is or isn't in terms of an offering. So we'll talk about that and we'll see what we all think going forward. So, good evening to Socially, Sloth, Space Saga, Stakaragord, you're in here from the beginning, hello buddy, Monster AV, Notorious, and anyone else that is in chat, welcome, and not said anything yet, welcome in, good to see you all, and while I sort my glasses out here, yeah, let's pop over and have a look at what Drake Interplanetary, not DefenseCon, what Drake Interplanetary has for us. Yeah, so, I mean, if you haven't already seen it, you've probably seen it revolving through on my glasses, I would imagine. I might just kind of move myself around depending on what ends up being behind me on the screen. The one thing that kind of stuck out to me about the Drake Day, right off the bat, was that it's not a traditional ILW lineup. A lot of what's been displayed for Drake has been Drake's kind of entire lineup, including all the industrial and the non kind of military ships. So that's been a little bit interesting that that's the case. But as we scroll through, we'll have a look at the war bond, but it's about to give itself away. There we go. Scrolling through. The first part of the lineup, very obviously their military or military adjacent lineup being all these. Cutlass Steel. Don't want to talk about the Cutlass Steel. It just, yeah, the strange kind of dropship that sits in a very weird niche within Drake. And then we started getting into the cutters, and I was like, okay, I get it. Like, I get one cutter, and then the Rambler's there, and then, alright, Scout I can kind of get as well. Dragonfly, that possibly too is military adjacent. And then we got into the Golem, and I was like, wait a second, this is not what I was expecting. So we got the Golem, we got the Herald. That, again, I guess, data running, potentially that could be military adjacent. And then we started getting into things like the Ironclad Assault, I understand, 100%. Kraken I get, Kraken Privateer. And then we're like the Mule and the Vulture. And then it was like, not sure. Apteryx, hello my friend, welcome in. The daily war bond is the Caterpillar with 10 years insurance. So if you want to go and pick up the Caterpillar, you are looking at $300 rather than $330. So, yeah. That's your, I guess, military adjacent. They're making the argument. Military adjacent transport. I'm not buying it. I'm not buying a single bit of it. It's kind of interesting that they've gone this. They did say something kind of interesting in the event schedule, though. They had this little bit where they said, don't fret workers, we'll be back. So it was almost like a nod to the fact they're talking about workers and not military or, starmen and women, that sort of stuff, that they were possibly going to go this route. But yeah, slightly interesting. I only have 2 Drake ships, says Burger Pops, the Ironclad and the Kraken. Going small then. Small ships. Little ones, not big ones. Little ones. Hello, Citizen Ninja. Welcome in. Good to see you, my friend. Yeah, I would say an interesting lineup. Drake has... I quite like the lineup that Drake has, even though I don't own many of their ships themselves. I've got the Vulture. I like the Dragonfly as a transport. I like the Mule as a transport. I had one of those for a little while. I know the Corsair, just having seen it there on the screen, is very popular. And there's something about the Caterpillar that I quite enjoy as well. And, you know, I don't want to take anything from, you know, away from the Ironclad and that. I know the Ironclad was hugely popular when that was released. And obviously the Kraken being the only kind of dedicated carrier that's being sold at the minute. No, not the Liberator. Shush your mouth. No, no, no. But being the only dedicated kind of carrier with, you know, that sort of internal hangars and repair facilities and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, a bit of an interesting one. Not much there to go on. However, with the lack of a concept this IAE, what do you guys think? Is this a move away from concepts now that they're going to go more to flyable concepts? What do we think? Good evening to Sunny Boy, welcome in. Asteroid bases don't hollow themselves out, absolutely. Good evening to Shadow Gal as well. Dragonfly and Mule are trash, down with Drake. I think we might end up with a bit of a fight in the comments a little later on. Do you think BMM owners will get the Privateer when it comes out? I mean, despite the fact that it's a hell of a jump upward in terms of value, I don't see necessarily why they wouldn't, because if it comes with the shop functionality, that's what we're waiting on, right? And my guess is that they're going to perfect that for base building, possibly, and the Kraken, because they spoke about it specifically, right? That you could have stuff on display in your bases, suits of armor, you know, furniture that would lock to a grid. Right, so people couldn't just walk in and go, oh, you've got some nice furniture, whip their multi-tool out and just walk out with it all, that there would be a grid and permissions. And that strikes me very much the same as what you're going to get with shops. Whether that comes first to base building, or whether that comes first to the Kraken, good question, well asked. I do feel like the Kraken might be waiting on a little bit more than just, for the Privateer variant, than just shop tech. Obviously, bigger ships like that, potentially, you know, maybe they'll look at rearm refuel as part of that as well. For a carrier, it would make sense, right? Because in that respect, that would also explain why the Liberator is where it is at the moment. Because there's no, as far as we can see, in terms of just implementing it in game, there's no barrier to the Liberator coming. However, they are sat on it. Despite the fact that we now have, you know, pyro and moving ships around and all that sort of stuff. So it is very likely, I think, that they're probably waiting for something else for that carrier tech to release what they call carriers, even though one of them isn't. So we'll see. Wow, chat's exploded. Good evening all. Hellwinter, hello, buddy. DHB. Drake ships look like they would smell like... I'm not repeating that, but I don't disagree. When the Mule first came out, if you crashed it hard enough for it to die, all the mules on the entire server also died. Welcome to Drake. The Drake Mule Lemming variant? You know, if one goes, they all go, maybe? I don't know. Good question. BMM maybe not coming before 2030. So, I don't see the obstacle with the BMM other than the size of it and the fact that they are, in effect... It's going to be a first of class, right? Yes, we have the Banu Defender, but if you go and have a look around the Banu Defender, there's not enough in it really to justify getting a, you know, like you can't extrapolate enough of that internal design language out to fill a ship the size of the Banu Matchman. So they're having to communicate all this for the first time. You know, the reason they were able to punch the Idris out in the way that they did was. You know, Aegis design language is very clearly defined. So that was nice and easy, right? I'd say easy. I don't mean that. But in terms of the internal spaces, they were easy to envision because you don't have to go, okay, what does a really big space look like inside an Aegis ship? Because we know, right? So yeah, shop gameplay for BMM needed to. Yeah, absolutely, and that's why we're talking about the gameplay for either base building, having the shops, because they're talking about the same thing, being able to lock stuff down and people interact with that, or that it comes with the Idris, Idris, oops, sorry, Kraken owners, the Kraken Privateer, which is going to have the shops on as well. You know, it may well come for that as well, because we know they're going to be working on Drake after they finish the current RSI lineup with things like the Apollo and the passes, Gib passes. They should just give us the 600i rework instead of the BMM. I don't know. So here's the really interesting question for you guys. We've not had at all a concept this IE. So what do you think the chances are of an Alien Week concept? Possible? Are we getting an alien concept at that? Still have 2 days. I mean, but we've done all the manufacturers. We've been through all the manufacturers. There's nothing left. The only thing we know we're going to get is we're going to get the war bond stuff. The new, I was about to say raft of war bonds, but that might be misleading. The new set of war bonds that they are changing, that they've said that we haven't seen yet at ILW. So there's that. Low chance, no leaks, says Dalkanobi. Shadow Girl reckons 65%, which is almost, but not quite, 2/3. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see if that does happen for us. I'd like to see a little bit more work on the alien offerings. I know it comes with, you know, what people call the alien tax, it being more expensive and that sort of stuff. But I wouldn't say no to that sort of, you know, I guess, you know, a little bit of an expansion of that catalogue. Or maybe we'll get the Raelian in, maybe, I don't know. It would be really very cool, but we'll see. Yeah, Raelian news would be good, says Space Saga, absolutely. Speaking of the RAF, says Citizen Ninja, I wouldn't be surprised if it gets a price increase since the cargo capacity doubled. Yeah, possibly. Alien something industrial. Yeah, hope to see the Raelian, says Truther. Alien mining ship would be cool, says Delcanobi. Yeah, absolutely. I think that would be kind of cool, is that if when they start doing the alien stuff, that changes the mechanics of that, how that works slightly. I mean, if they were going to do that, that would probably mean they were going to kick that well down the line, because we have one method of mining. But, you know, it's always nice to hope. It would be nice to be for alien ships to be more than just a skin and a different HUD and, you know, a different means of your chair going into, think of the Sulen, right? Your chair going into position to fly. It would be nice if they did things slightly differently. But we can hope. Alien Industrial would easily become daily flyers for me, says Sloth, for a while if they get brought in. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, we'll see. There's alien mining ship, sorry, Del and Shadow both said about the alien mining ship. Absolutely. So, I'm just going to scoot over. Do let me know if the music's a little too loud. It's really loud in my headset. I think I pumped the volume up all the way, so let's drop that down a bit so I can hear myself think. Pop that back up so you guys hear the same thing. There we go. Okay. So, nothing on that screen. I think what might be interesting to have a very, very quick look at, I've only just quickly glanced at this one, and the next tab I haven't looked at all. So let's have a look at what I'm talking. So, the funding tracker then. So when we looked at the first hour, I think it was, of the Asgard sale, they were $800,000 up. Turns out, on the rest of that day, they made another 2 mil. And yes, the Idris is out as well, so those sales obviously split between the Idris being more, you know, with more of the stock limited sale, and the Asgard, and then a drop down to still well over 2 mil in day 2 yesterday, which is significant. So yeah, kind of scary. How do you feel, says Artemis, about a tier 3 medbay on the Paladin to make up for the lack of SCU? Yeah, I think, like, everyone wants everything to do everything, right? Is that, you know, a gunship primarily is gunning. You know, I think if a significant ship like the Perseus doesn't get a medbed, I think you struggle then to make the argument for something like the Paladin, because then if the Paladin gets it, why not the Redeemer? Why not, you know, the Asgard? Why not the Valkyrie? Why not the, you know, more people going to be using the Valk than the Asgard, or so than the Paladin? So you see what I mean? Is that's when it starts to, you know, then it's all about, well, I want to bring everything. There's certain ships that are designed to either operate from a fleet, or in close proximity to support, and that would be one of them. Would be my guess. Probably not the answer that you're after, Artemis, but that's my feeling on it. Howard says, is the drop refunds or just less money made? No. The drop is that they made whatever the first day and whatever the second day, and you would expect that drop, right, given the fact that the Asgard is now on sale for 24 hours. Yeah, that's that. Paladin doesn't have the crew space to include Dr. Nurse, absolutely. Some of the drop is bookkeeping, as the UK gives money when you lose money. Hang on, wait. No. So this is the daily. So on the 23rd they made 2.8 mil. On the 24th they made just over 2 mil. So in 2 days they made almost 5 million, possibly even 5 million in 2 days. So yeah, ta-da. So there's that. Have I missed a comment about the yearly, or is it just we kind of? So yeah. And then what will be interesting is to see what this looks like now. So this is the yearly filter for the funding dashboard. And once again, we are a significant distance ahead of where we were before. So if you remember, we kind of looked at this at the very first stream, and we talked about, you know, the Idris stuff, and that was all great. And then a little bit after that, it seemed to really kind of die off, right? And we were talking about, well, maybe they sacrificed all of that kind of, you know, year-on-year increase. Not so much now. They are, yeah. I mean, if you look at the remainder of the year, with the exception of 2023, which is the second complete line up from the bottom, they all look very similar in terms of length. Little bit different, but they're not massively different. So assuming that that trend continues, that may well, it looks like we're on track to have the highest year ever, which is kind of scary. Yeah, Kraken's selling out. I had a look, albeit a little bit late. I did have a look at the Kraken. Obviously sold out in both aspects of the war bonds and the normal, the non-war bond versions. Stuff is selling out, and I think potentially we're getting more Krakens. There's the ICT coming, absolutely. Potentially something, you know, and I'm not saying there is, right? But there could well be some sort of concept coming, you know, for Fleet Week, just on the basis that we haven't had a concept at all. Or maybe they're just concentrating on putting stuff in the game. The thing for me, so people talk about, all the time talk about CIG, they're doing this because they're struggling for money and me. What we did see is when, you know, the Blades came out, they're scrambling for money and all this, that and the other. Well, you can do that with concepts too, right? You can pump out concepts because you need concept art, you need some idea of what it is, you need some figures that you're going to put together, that this is what the SCU is the size of the guns, blah, 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 blah. That's that. So I think for me, when people talk about CIG being in financial difficulty, I will worry when they start pumping out concepts left, right, and centre. because that's an easy way to try and generate some income, right? So yeah. Yeah, Alien Week follows on almost immediately after ILW. So we'll see that very, very shortly. Got me a cracking first wave. Truther, I'm pleased for you. That's good news. Yeah, pleased. I wouldn't be surprised if the Perseus gets a med bay. The concept was completed before they really knew what direction they were going. It doesn't need it. So I know this is going to wind people up, right? As a wannabe, as a Perseus owner, as someone who wants the Perseus, give Perseus, please, CIG. It doesn't need it. It does not, because it's designed to operate in a fleet. Every ship getting a medbay completely invalidates ships like the Cutty Red, the Terrapin Medevac, the C8R, the Apollo, both versions, and the Endeavour Hope, the hospital ship. If every ship's gets a medbed, it becomes, kind of useless. The other thing that comes from that is, later on, when you start putting ground vehicles in, like the Nurser and stuff like that, and if we get anything else of that ilk, also, base building, medical ships are going to sit in a very weird place that you don't actually need one, right? The key thing they're going to do for most people, like they are at the moment, is medical ships will become some sort of bunker runner, right? So you go to, like what we were doing this weekend, Jadomo, Jamlak and I were down in Hathor, and I was running the Terrapin Medevac, because clears injuries up to tier 2. If I'm running out of food and drink, I don't even need to worry about eating there. I'll just jump back on the medbed and it'll bring me back up to full. So yeah, I think that'll be interesting. And the other thing, this is going to upset some people, the other thing that I think we're going to see happen at some point is medical beds and respawning will become separate. So not every medbed will be able to respawn, and that's why ships like the hospital on board the Endeavour will become far more important, things like that. I think that is likely, just from the point of view of, think of it from this way, from a gameplay point of view, right? You're going to go onto the Idris, and you're going to fight and board it and fight the people that are on it. If they can respawn in those beds all of the time, you're not fighting the full Idris crew, you're fighting multiple respawns of the full Idris crew. And also, the other thing about that is, at the moment, as we've discovered, as poor Edison discovered the other day when we were playing, is that if respawning is going to be linked to you've got multiple respawns before the clone thing happens, and then you become a different character and you inherit your previous character's stuff. If people can kill you in the bed because they're camping your ship, and there's no way to change your respawn, you have one of two options. You stop playing, or you die 10, 12, 14, 16 times over. Which is bad. Which is very bad. So I think they're going to do something to opt to respawn. And I think it likely that the reason dedicated medical ships will become important is they will be the locations where you respawn. Think about it, hospitals, in terms of respawning until they did that. And I think they said it was temporary. Someone check my math on this. I think they said that for the time being, they were going to give medbeds in ships and vehicles the ability to respawn. I don't think it's not a permanent intention. I think a gameplay for how it is now rather than a gameplay for how it's intended to be in the future. The danger with that, of course, is that you give gamers something and then, just you try taking it off them. So yeah. Back to the original plan. T1 beds only for respawn, very possibly. Tyre rolled that back. It's going to be range limited, but retain the capability, potentially. We need more Gettical gameplay, says Shadow Girl. Give us surgery to save lives rather than just backspacing, very possibly. We'll likely get limited by some type of material and resource. Yeah, so it doesn't work on the Anvil, the Terrapin Medic. It does, however, you can actually open the slots on the C8R cartridge. There's Pisces. There's spaces that say cartridge, and there's obviously something designed to go in there. So whether it's some sort of healing gel or kind of like the Paramed refills, something like that, or whether that's cartridges for respawning people, don't know. Yeah, we'll see. You can fit a Nursa on a Perseus. Yeah, so this is the interesting thing of the moment. Of course, as soon as you come to this ability to reload, with engineering, they said at some point there's going to be interior like slots where you can start feeding ammunition in, and it will the guns will reload, and have access to that pool, so you can just keep feeding in. Until that happens, medical beds on vehicles on ships like that are going to be a certainty, 100%. When that happens, then it's going to become a choice. Then it's going to start to becoming, well, okay, I can reload my ship internally from missiles, with torpedoes, with missiles, with everything else, and ammunition, or I can do a medical thing and sacrifice all of that, so become a very short endurance combat ship. Sloth says it would be nice to have a secure one-way door to be able to spawn behind that would simulate more crew coming out the ship when you respawn. Yeah, and this is the interesting thing, right? Is if you then orchestrate the takeover of someone else's Idris, it's like, how do you lock that down? So if you're able to infiltrate it, and you can go down that, maybe you pull the fuses out for the med bay or something. I don't know, but they have issues over this. The whole death of a spaceman thing. All of that is still going to take some figuring out, and they do not have this figured out at all. And I think they keep changing stuff. So yeah. Hammer Berlin, welcome in. Good to see you. Body goo, says to Garagod, please don't. But just don't. We don't need to get that. TAC has spaces for that as well, says Manny. Oh, they're actually interactable, are they? Cool. Yeah. So I do wonder how the material and resource works with smaller medical areas such as the CAR and NERSA. There's no SU space, says Matthews. Yeah, so it's actually a loadable. It's like a slot. It looks like kind of like quite a chunky cartridge space that you kind of load in. Kind of like twice the size of a fuse, basically, and you can put that in. We'll see. We'll see. Avi says, I like the idea of limiting the resource and also by damage. So you can regen on a tier 3, but it says 3 to 5 times more damage to your DNA than a tier 2, and something like a tier 1 would be minimal damage. And that's to your clone and the ability to respawn. I'd rather have the Perseus have a hangar than a vehicle bay. Yeah, and this is where we start going down the route of, people go, well, it's military, it should have medical. And that's not actually how military ships work. Frigates and destroyers currently will have a sick bay on board. But these are not dedicated surgeries and everything else, except in combat conditions. I can speak from personal experience when we've had people with something as simple as, for example, appendicitis, we get them off the ship. We go land them. If there's somewhere nearby that's got reasonable medical facilities, if we're not in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, these people will be casevaced ashore, and they'll be dealt with by civilian personnel ashore. Because there's no need to, there's no need to do that on board there. It's only when you get to ships like the carriers, like amphibious ships, like the much bigger ships, hospital ships themselves, that they have dedicated medical staff, GPs, and everything else. So yeah, it's not guaranteed. This whole idea, well, it's it's military, it should have medical. That's a movie thing. That's not a reality thing. So yeah. I don't know about you, Badger, says Matthew, but I eat at Domino's a few times a week. A VHF's type of goo ain't going to print my ass, let alone the rest of me. I can't help you with that, Matthew. However, I feel personally attacked by this. Yeah, no, I get you, buddy. Exactly that. Welcome in, Edison. Good to see you, buddy. I'd rather have the Polaris be a brawler than the torpedo boat it is, but hey, CRG made it strike ships instead of a brawler. So, yeah. Hello, Wolf. When dead, allow choice, so you can use the risk of spawning into a ship or back at original home port. Yeah, I think they're really going to have to think about how this works, right? Because anything like that can be abused. What if the ship is blown up mid-respawn time? Because people say, well, what about the timer? They'll just introduce a timer, so you respawn, but it takes 10 minutes. It's like, great. What happens if you're blown up during that period before you've respawned? What does that do to you? Does that count as a respawn, or not. Yeah, they've got some stuff to work out. Hellwinter says, I wonder if for more medic gameplay, we'll get something like the mining module attachment for FPS. That would waylay some of the issues with everyone wanting medbeds on everything. Yeah, I mean, look, what I think they need is they need a more permanent solution than just the med gun giving you drugs, right? So, for example, you should be able to splint an arm or a leg, right? You should be able to packing bandage or something like that the torso or the head, right? And what it does is it stops a lot of that, it stops those things happening, but you lose something. So maybe your aim down sight time is slower, or maybe you can only do it for a certain amount of time. Maybe you can't do it at all if your arms are hurt, or maybe that changes with whatever level you're at. Same with legs, right? Maybe you at tier 3 you can jog but you can't sprint. Maybe at tier 2 you can, whatever it is, right? And you become more susceptible to injuries in those locations, just like you are now, although to not the same extent. Because the problem is, if they keep the system now, you are going to basically blood drug out, right? You're going to get to the point where you're drunk on whatever the med gun is giving you, whatever, you set the sliders to. It really doesn't, for most conditions, clear the BDL, which is your blood drug level. I'm just trying to be careful, because otherwise YouTube will get really angry at me for saying stuff like this. But it'll clear your BDL. It won't clear it back to 0. So you end up going further and further and further, which is what's making medbeds so damn vital, because otherwise you've got to go straight back. And you think about ships like the Aquila and the MSR, anything with like an exploration tilt to it, ships like that need a lot of supplies to go and fly a greater distance, to go out and do their role of, explore Brave New Worlds and all that sort of stuff. If every time you get someone injured like that, you've got to turn back and go back to somewhere with a medbed, or you've got to sacrifice those supplies to put a NASA in the medbed, in the vehicle bay or the cargo bay, that's not the point of them. So they need some sort of, okay, you've got an injury, this risk versus reward thing, I'm going to give you a temporary fix, which is more permanent than just zapping you with a med gun every 3 minutes, and you can then make the choice to continue. I'm just going to skip this bit. So it's that sort of stuff, and you would hope that would be medic gameplay. I do like the change, and I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me here. I do like the change that the med gun now takes up the pistol slot, because now it is a conscious choice to heal other people, to be ready to heal other people and yourself, rather than having your sidearm ready to stay in combat, which instantly means that you want to be a little bit more careful as a medic, because you're going to have to reload if you get caught short in a fight, rather than just switching to your secondary or whatever. Having that there ready to go is actually quite a nice change, I think. And that way then you can still just heal yourself up with a multi-tool with a med gun attachment, but if you want to go a little bit more into sorting people's out people's conditions and tiers, injuries and stuff, that's where the med gun's going to come in, and that's what's going to help. So I don't have a problem with that change. I would also say some injuries should heal over time, like a broken arm won't heal, but a clean bullet through the arm. Yeah, they'll obviously need to implement a system that would be able to tell the difference, and you would need to tell the difference, but maybe that's what your medic is for. So yeah. Honestly, says Matthew, I kind of want the med gun to be a primary with only a secondary available. Yeah, potentially. Maybe that's, again, the next step up. So yeah. You never know, CIG might up the SCU on the Parasaurs like they did the 2 main turrets. Possibly. I think the easy thing, it's easy to upgun turrets. It's harder to increase internal space. We'll see. So, sorry Stack, I'm trying to read it. How cool would you need time after respawn to get your sensors and strength? Very possible. I want to play a mini game of attaching robotic prosthetics. You might be waiting a little while for that one, mate. You might. Yeah. It's. I know they said, again, prosthetics is something that they want and all that sort of stuff. I think the whole death thing is going to take a lot longer. I mean, one of the things there is they talk about the idea of, and they talked about this with the Galaxy, is the idea of using a Pisces with a med bay and using it to, as like an ambulance to go and get casualties and bring them back and stuff. At the moment, there's absolutely no need for that to be a C8R because it doesn't bring anything else to the party. So maybe that's something that it can do, that medbed, even if it can't cure, a tier 3 can't do anything with tier 2, tier 1, maybe it extends respawn time as you effectively stabilize the patient. We'll see. Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see. Yeah, it's the whole medical thing. They've got a lot to work on. They've got a lot to figure out. Chat's going in a direction I'm not following. You guys have fun with that, but I want no part of it. Yeah, there's certainly some interesting things that they can get involved in. So yeah, obviously at the moment we don't have. Oh my god! Oh, wait, is that? No, that's the week before, right? Week 20 was the week before. So week 21, which is the week that's just about to come to an end now, we'll find out what their funding figures look like tomorrow when we go to the whatever they call it. I want to say the finale. Is that what they call it now? Yeah, the finale. So that'll be 26th and the 27th. Next generation of heroes, whether they get war bonds that exist over the 2 days, whether they get war bonds that are just, one set for the 26th, one set for the 27th, unsure at this time. We will have to see what they've got coming out. I know previously, we might get some other little bits thrown in there. The gear stuff, was that IE or ILW? I can't quite remember. But yeah. Sunny Boy says, so what happens if you end up in a cryo prison prod? You're not dead, so can you respawn? That. Exactly that. And then it's a case of, well, okay, how does that work? Because if you get more money for capturing people alive, which you'd think you would, right? Because not just dropping them on the spot is more risk. You're making yourself vulnerable while you secure them and then move them into the pod. You've not got your primary weapon out. You're either tractor beaming them or you're physically lifting them in. You would expect more money for that. Doing that, do you harm the money, right? If you backspace in the bounty pod, do they get the dead one, or do they still get the money alive because you were alive? There's a lot for them to work out. Obviously there are very significant gameplay problems with putting someone in a cryopod and not letting them out. So we'll have to see. I mean, maybe effectively in that point, you go to prison and then, your your body in effect that's being transported around becomes something that needs to be moved from A to B. Very good question. Again, it's one of those things where you go, meh. Han Solo treatment. You are now in carbonite, sir. That's that. Drop Yogurt. Hello, buddy. Haven't seen you in a while. Hope you're doing well. Volv says, a career dedicated armor for medics may allow a med gun added in a different location in the core, allowing a medic to again have a sidearm, removing the mechanical slot on the legs. I mean, possibly. There's no reason that might not happen. Some sort of medical armor would be cool. Again, the thing is with two primary weapons, the need for a secondary really drops off. You just switch primaries. You know what I mean? So we'll see. Because then people go, well, I want my sniper rifle, and that's not good for indoors. It's like, well, then obviously you're clearly not playing the role of a medic. You're playing the role of a sniper who wants access to all of the medic abilities whilst continuing to be a sniper. Again, unpopular opinion, but didn't they say the pod become cargo and you end up respawning? Yeah, possibly. I mean, I don't remember them saying that, Hellwinter, but I'm sure you're not wrong. We'll just see. I think so much of this game is still in flux. Because interestingly, at that CitizenCon, we actually watched them. So the CitizenCon in America, so 2023, that we actually saw them. They showed off restraining someone. So they did a non-lethal, and then they turned them over and restrained their hands. And they did say most of what they saw would have been in the game in the next 12 months. So they're obviously kind of still not sure about how they want to implement this and what it's going to mean for players. And that's just going to continue. Omnipresence, hello, buddy. Sorry you have a 12-hour printed sensor, says Matthew. Enjoy being my coffee table after I catch you for a 6-hour gaming session before I drop you off to start your 12. That's the problem. Exactly that. So yeah. So I think, the easy way around that is that these pods only accept people with bounties on them. Right? So you go to put it in and it's like, you don't have a bounty for this person. I know people go, yeah, but more immersion. Yeah, but they got to do something, right? For exactly that reason. Is like, well, this dude annoyed me, so I've run up behind him, I've knocked him out, I've now, put him in a cargo pod. I'm going to see how long I can stay awake flying this guy around the middle of nowhere in my cargo pod before I hand him over for whatever. They've got to do something with that. So, yeah. We'll see. I mean, I think I kind of like the idea as once you are captured, you start your prison sentence anyway. And then what was your body then becomes a bounty pod that is now just a bounty pod, right? The body's in there, you can see the face, but that's it now. You don't take them out again. You then have to complete the mission or whatever. And whether they make it to prison with you or not is entirely irrelevant. There's some bits where they're just not going to be able to make it as incredible. So I kind of like the idea of being able to do prison missions and break people out like NPCs and stuff on prison transports. I know they did that with the Caterpillar, but making that something that is a UEE kind of whatever they are, the advocacy prison transports, it becomes a really interesting gameplay loop for the criminal element to get involved in. That's a lot of fun. And, it means that you're adding a lot more detail to criminal gameplay than just murder hoboing. Because, let's face it, you're always going to have your murder hobos. Your murder hobos are always going to be murder hobos. And they will find ways to be murder hobos. Even if that means accidentally driving into you or whatever, right? That element is always going to exist. There are also people for whom the only option to be a criminal is to murder hobo. So what you're then looking for is, okay, well, maybe if we give criminals more interesting gameplay. I mean, if they were able to put something in like Serenity, where you're fighting the man, the old Firefly series, you're fighting the man, and it's all about, a kind of tyrannical power or tyrannical organization. And actually, you're not there to hurt the little guy, you're there to rip off the big guy. That sort of stuff is very, very kind of enticing gameplay to me. I would quite enjoy that. So if I could do that, and yet, only have to deal or pirate or whatever players who are arseholes to me first, I'd be more than happy with that. I kind of like that idea. Hey, Sebastian. I hope the weekend is going well. It really is. I had a lot of fun this weekend, including my first up-close and personal experience with the Tiger 1, the German tank of World War II. That thing is a beast. And you have all seen, most of you will have seen, if you've seen the movie, you will have seen the two tanks that I saw today. Because if you've seen Fury, you've seen Tiger 131, and you've seen Fury. I've put my hand on both of them today, which is very cool. They're both out at Bovington Tank Museum here in the UK. Terrifying bits of kit. The Tiger, you cannot take a photo from my head height and get anything like what that tank is. I'm holding the camera above my head to have a look at it. The Tiger's terrifying. If you're interested, I will a little later on. I'll do a little bit of a photo dump. This visit and the last visit that I did, I'll do a little bit of photo dump on Discord, and people can take a look. I got a great photo down the barrel of the Tiger, and that was on tippy toes, holding the camera above my head. And I'm not short. I'm almost 6 foot. I'm 181 centimeters, I think. 181, 183, 181. So yeah, that's they are huge. So yeah, so Tiger 131 is the last functioning Tiger 1, as in can still be driven, in the world. So it's driven once a year. It's kind of, really cool. It's not on loan. It's owned by Bovington. Tiger 131 is Bovington's Tiger. It's run here every single year at something called Tank Fest. They also do Tiger Day, Tiger Fest. But yeah, Tiger 131, go look it up. She's a beautiful piece of kit. She actually still has scrapes in the glacis, the front armour, where she was shot at by British tanks. And there are chunks missing from her armour where she was hit. Yeah, she's a scary bit of kit. It's what makes Tiger 131 so interesting. They've also got a King Tiger, Tiger 2, that was also shot at. They were so scared of it, they shot at it after it had been abandoned. Some really cool stuff. So yeah. Let's have a look. Fury was a good movie. It really, really was. It was incredibly good. So yeah. But yeah. Interesting. So, we're going to see what the CCUs are tomorrow and the 27th. I'm not sure whether or not there's going to be enough to make it worthwhile to stream and ever. I've got that on a t-shirt, Truther. I've got the Fury t-shirt, best job I ever had. I'm not wearing it. I wish I had. I was going to put it on, and then I was like, no, I'll put it on tomorrow because it's fresh out the wash. And I had a nap this afternoon, so yeah. Yeah. There's a great chain at the moment, says Matthew. MX to Cat to TAC. Interesting. Yeah. Well worth looking at. That sort of stuff. Like I said, we'll see what's going on with the finale and things. Because I'm not yet convinced whether or not there's going to be enough there to stream. Obviously, if there is big news, or if something does happen and we end up getting a concept or whatever, then of course I will put as much notice up as I can and jump in the stream and bring you all the latest news from Star Citizen. Other than that, we've hit quite a bit this week because, unsurprisingly, having streamed this many times in the week, we've covered the news, we've covered the roadmap roundup, we've done all of that stuff. So, there's not much else to kind of cover at the moment. We are looking good on that front. I'm just going to quickly flick through Spectrum while I'm here talking to you guys and see what is happening and see if they've got anything else that they wanted to say, because they did have an announcement about limited availability ships. Maybe that's, here we go. Because I would imagine the Kraken's got a few more waves in it, I'm guessing. I guess we could have a look, couldn't we? Let's go and have a look at the page. Gonna transition across. We've zoomed in a bit. So let's go find the Kraken, see what's going on. Here we go. View offers. So I don't know. Maybe they're not doing it in waves. Maybe they're just throwing it out and that's that. But yeah, sold out both. Interesting. So yeah, I just CC'd my Guardian to Asgard Warbond. Nice. Yeah, lots of people enjoying the Asgard at the minute, which is very, very cool. Pleased that people are enjoying that. Obviously, I took the loaner. It's gone now because I only had it for 48 hours. But yeah, very impressed with the ship, flying it around. Like the front, like the extra wings. I know a lot of people don't, but I kind of like them. I think it looks good. So yeah, obviously there's a lot come out of IE in terms of dropships. There's a lot come out of IE in terms of gunships and the difference between the two. And people trying to use the Valkyrie and that sort of stuff the Asgard as a gunship and all that sort of stuff and how viable. So there's lots of videos ideas there. We'll see what happens with with Alien Week. May well do a stream again depending on what comes there, because most of us know what ships are there, and when I don't want to talk too much about specific financial advice and tailoring that to an individual. Just talking about, a CCU existing isn't financial advice. But, it makes it hard to stream. I don't want to just stream for the sake of, talking about something that we all know how it works and that sort of stuff. But if there's something that's worth streaming, I will absolutely do that. Discord, link down in the description below. 9 p.m. UK time every Friday. We try to do something. Friday night shenanigans. They used to be Friday night ops, but they're not organised enough to be called an op, so it's a shenanigan instead. And then Sunday, as normal, we return to exactly as we have done. 9 p.m. streaming time in the UK. A couple of hours covering everything that's gone on that week and whatever news is coming from Star Citizen. Truther says, by the way, I got my Kraken in cart in the first minute, got to check out, and it was sold out. I kept trying. Finally, 30 minutes after Wave 1 went live, I was able to check out. Keep trying if it's in your cart. Good advice. I guess if people want to put them back out and, and people kind of melt them, I guess, maybe they put them back. Although it just puts it to buybacks, right? But yeah, worth having a look. Yeah. Fantastic. So yes, it's been a long old week keeping up with everything in Star Citizen. Thank you ever so much to all of you for coming. We've had a couple of great streams. Obviously this one, not as many people, but I appreciate you guys for sticking with. Lots of new faces, lots of regulars. It's great to come and have a chat with you guys and do all this sort of stuff. I really appreciate you. It's been a lot of fun. And maybe is setting the scene for more regular streams and all that sort of stuff. The internet connection is doing a fantastic job of keeping up and letting me stream this. I've been streaming the game and that's been working a lot better. So yeah. And now that work is kind of calming down a little bit for me, and will have calmed down by the end of July, get back to a more regular content schedule, and it would be great to see you guys more regularly. Appreciate each and every one of you. As for now, I'm going to go and get myself some food because I haven't eaten since lunchtime, and I'm going to go and chill out for the rest of the evening. It's been an absolute pleasure here to spend time with all of you. You've been watching Drinkers with Gaming Problems. Thank you very much for stopping by. I'll see you soon.